So UFC 308 is in a few days, and these odds are looking kinda whack. Who did this? Why are both Max Holloway and Robert Whittaker at around plus 200? Whittaker I can understand maybe a little bit, because Khamzat first round massacre is still very real. But Holloway at those odds is such a steal. Whether you think he's gonna win or not, I hope we can all agree that Holloway being that big of an underdog against anyone whose name isn't Alex Volkanovski is a little weird. Better for me though, because I'm gonna say it. Yep, I'm gonna say it. Max Holloway's gonna win. That's right. Yep. No taking it back now. Of course, now that I said that, Topuria's gonna knock him out in the first round. But I'm gonna stand on it. I really think Max is gonna take it. In fact, maybe I'm a little crazy, but this feels like the worst possible matchup for Ilia Topuria at 145 right now. Topuria is really good, and his style is really cool to watch, but it's also very simple. He's a boxer. He stands orthodox and doesn't switch stances. His stance is very wide and heavy on his lead foot, and the only kick he throws is the outside calf kick. But he continues to win and knock everyone out despite having such a simple style because he's so good at it. He also has great wrestling and jiu-jitsu, so taking him to the ground isn't a viable option. So why do I think Holloway's gonna beat him? The first reason is output. Topuria doesn't throw a lot. He waits until he's in the pocket or has you hurt to really start to unload. And he's very patient in waiting until the perfect moment to let out a combination. Volkanovski had a lot of success staying away from Ilia, jabbing and kicking to score points. His activity was much higher and was outlanding up until the knockout. Max Holloway, on the other hand, is very, very active. He goes 5 rounds over and over again and puts up crazy numbers every time. Like, the dude landed 445 significant strikes on Calvin Kattar. If it comes down to a points game of who landed more, Ilia Topuria is not going to win. Max Holloway is going to land more in this fight. But I'm not necessarily saying Holloway will win if it goes to a decision, because damage is more important than points, and it's definitely still very possible that Topuria hurts Max multiple times. But I'm not sure it'll be enough to steal the rounds. As for specific things Max should do if he wants to win, it's also not that complicated. Let's look at it like this. How do you beat a boxer? You kick their lead leg, preferably the outside calf, because the kick will be a lot stronger coming from your back leg. Think of Poirier versus McGregor too. McGregor took a much more boxing heavy approach, and Poirier kicked his calf over and over again until he couldn't move anymore. The same exact thing can be done to Topuria. This is the number one reason people don't typically take a boxing approach to MMA. Josh Emmett did this a good bit when he went against Topuria, and it was quite literally the only success he was having in that fight. The problem Emmett had was that he's also someone who wants to get in the pocket and bang, and Ilia just completely outclassed him. Volkanovski, for some reason, didn't really do this. He did it a couple times, but it definitely wasn't something he was regularly going for. The second thing Holloway has to do is just not back up in a straight line to the cage, because he's just going to eat a combination. Ideally, he should try to not end up with his back to the cage at all. But if it does happen, he has 2 options: move to the side to escape, or clinch. Again, this goes back to simple boxing. You're backed up against the ropes, you move to the side, or you clinch to get them off you. This was another thing Volk did wrong. While he was running around jabbing and kicking, Topuria was closing the gap and pushing Volk closer to the cage. And when he eventually reached the cage and couldn't back up anymore, instead of doing either of those 2 things, he just stood and threw, which was the absolute worst thing you could have done when stuck against the cage with a pure boxer with a lot of power. That's kinda it. Like I said, the way you beat a guy like Topuria really isn't that complicated. The only person he's fought who I feel like had all the tools to beat him was Volkanovski, and he just made a few errors that got him knocked out. But Max Holloway doesn't make those same errors. At least he usually doesn't. In his Gaethje fight, he was throwing a lot of calf kicks and beating up Gaethje's lead leg, doing exactly what he should do to Ilia. And the getting out when backed against the cage thing is kind of a 50-50, actually. He definitely does move to the sides to escape when he feels the need to, but he usually doesn't seem to feel the need to, which is my biggest worry with this fight. Max loves to go to war. He never shies away from standing in the pocket and throwing, which is the last thing he should do with Topuria. I swear, if Holloway's winning and he decides to do this move, the whole video is getting thrown out the window. But anyways, to wrap it up with the Max Holloway vs Ilia Topuria prediction, I got Holloway by decision. His output's way higher and is going to outland Topuria on the feet through all 5 rounds. With the right plan, which is in my opinion a very simple plan, he shouldn't have any problem striking and avoiding getting knocked out. And even if he gets clocked at some point, Holloway's never been knocked down in his career, let alone knocked out. And he's fought some of the hardest hitters in a heavier weight class in Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje. Not saying it can't happen, just saying it's never happened before, and Max has had a long career. If Topuria wants to win, he's gonna have to lean on his wrestling and submissions heavily. If he actually does that, there's a much greater chance he takes it. But he almost never does that. So I'm picking Max. In all honesty though, this fight really could go either way, and I know I'm gonna get absolutely cooked if Topuria wins. Now real quick, my Khamzat Chimaev vs Robert Whittaker prediction. Once again, I'm going with the underdog, Robert Whittaker. It's not because he knocked out Ikram Aliskerov, who took that fight on short notice, because Khamzat Chimaev literally did the same thing to him before they were in the UFC. It's terrible reasoning for picking Whittaker. I'm choosing Whittaker for 2 different reasons. Number 1, obviously, it's a 5-round fight. Typically, Chimaev goes all out in round 1 to get the finish early, and most of the time it works. But when it doesn't, the following rounds are really hard for him because he spent all his energy. He barely squeezed out victories against Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman because they started having a lot of success after surviving the first round. And those were only 3-round fights. Now we're adding an additional 2 and putting him against his hardest opponent yet. And number 2, I don't think this is gonna be the best version of Khamzat Chimaev. I say that because he's been in and out of the hospital for a while now due to illness. He's had to pull out of fights because of it. There were rumors that he wouldn't even be able to fight again. And now he's coming back after going through all that with a year-long layoff to fight his first true 185-pound opponent, and it's one of the best in the division, who's been active. None of that's Chimaev's fault, but it's still a fact that's gotta be considered. Those are the main reasons why I'm picking Robert Whittaker, on top of the fact that he's a better striker and can hold his own in the grappling. But if you're still unsure, because there's still a real possibility Chimaev submits him in that first round, don't worry, because lucky for you, I have the answer to all your problems, and that's live betting. Put a little bit of money on Chimaev to win before the fight starts, then if Whittaker survives the first round, the odds will shift to make him even more of an underdog because he likely just got ragdolled for 5 minutes straight. That's when you put some money on Whittaker for a huge payout. Trust me guys, the plan's perfect. Unless Khamzat decides to fight like an actual MMA fighter and not go all out at the start, then it's not so perfect. I still think Whittaker wins regardless though. That's about it. I think this card's going to leave a lot of people either very happy or very upset. Regardless of who wins, these fights finally happening is going to open up a lot more matchups at featherweight and middleweight, so I'm here for it either way. That's it. See ya.